So hello everybody. Today I want to introduce you to an amazing, astonishing lady that I met several years ago. She was instrumental in a huge healing experience that I had. And so I'm extremely grateful and very honored that she's joined us on the podcast today. Her name is Lorraine Flaherty. Lorraine is an author, artist, lecturer, and transformational therapist. She's the author of Healing with Past Life Therapy, a transformational journey through time and space. Her family is from Ireland, but she's born and raised in London. She's a very well-travelled lady and she does it for work, and she loves dancing, which is probably why she's got this amazing, gorgeous figure. Hello, Lorraine. It's so lovely to have you here.
Hi, Angelina. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so honoured that you've joined us today. So I want to talk to you today about love. I know that not only are you an amazing, wonderful being of love, you work with people with love all the time, don't you, in your work?
Yeah, I do. I would say it's a huge chunk of the work that I do.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you what your thoughts and beliefs are around love before we get to the other people that you work with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think love is fundamental to life. Mm-hmm. I think that for whatever purpose that we have being here on the earth plane, I think that one of the greatest gifts that we have is the ability to connect and to experience a loving bond. And whether that bond is with your family, with your friends, or with romantic partners, even with the animals that we have in our world. I think that love is probably our greatest gift.
So then let's have a look at how you experience love in your work, because it is supremely important and profound, the work that you do. And I know this firsthand because when I was in a terrible state because of the loss of a very, very dear friend, you helped me through that in a way that I think nobody else could. And it was profoundly healing. So I'm sure I'm not the only person who works with you in that way and has that experience. So how do you find it when you work with other people? What is their feedback to you and what do you experience?
Well, as a therapist that works with hypnosis, I see my role as being a guide to enable people to get to the root or to the origin of the challenges that they face. And oftentimes the problem is love, whether it's a lack of love, whether it is that someone's heart has been broken, whether it's somebody that is struggling just to love themselves, which is a major part of it. It's about guiding people in to find the causes, the things that are preventing them from being able to have the love that they want in their life. And there's many different options. Sometimes it could be that somebody has experienced a really kind of distorted perception or a distorted view of love when they were growing up. You know, perhaps they grew up in a family where their parents didn't demonstrate a very loving relationship,
right,
and where things were a challenge. So sometimes people grow up with a belief, and I had this with somebody just recently, a belief that the people that are supposed to take care of you will hurt you.
Yes.
This was somebody that had been rejected, had been left outside when the family were having parties, and you know, the parents weren't really particularly interested.
Gosh,
and there were lots of fights and arguments. He witnessed his parents being very cutting towards one another. And so when it came to, in later life, having relationships, he found that as soon as he started to get close to somebody, he would just back off and effectively shut down. And he had no idea, really. He wanted to be in relationship. He wanted to get married and have children, but it just wasn't happening. And of course, he was hugely surprised when in the hypnosis, when I directed him to go back and find the origin, the root of the problem. And there he was, 3 years old, crying and feeling lost and feeling stuck and feeling really fearful about these
Yes.
people that were supposed to love him, and recognised that a belief had been created for him that love hurts at such a young age. And of course, it's too young for it to be conscious memory.
Right.
It's too young for there to be any sense. Obviously he grew up knowing that his parents had fought, but of course for most people you just think, oh well, that's just what people do, that's just how people are.
Right.
And so many people don't recognise the impact that can have, and the beliefs that are generated at such a young age that just continue. He carried that belief as part of the fundamental view that he had of the world, and therefore he just avoided deep connection with anybody.
Gosh. And of course, yes, and I'm assuming it would inform all of your life, not only your romantic love relationships. I would imagine it would inform all your relationships, right?
Absolutely. So it meant that there was a lack of trust on his part for anything. So he wasn't really getting on in his career, same way as his relationships, because he wasn't able to form those bonds with people that could allow him to move forward. So it was hugely empowering for him to be able to go back and to re-educate that 3-year-old as a grown-up with a different viewpoint of the world, who had seen that love could be good, that love could be wonderful, that it could be actually supportive. And he had examples which I'd asked him to think about before we started, of people in his world. And so we were able to take him on this beautiful guided journey where he could heal and to support and to really share new ideas with the 3-year-old version of him, and change the frame, change the belief that actually love is meant to be beautiful and joyful and something to be celebrated. So that's one perspective. And again, I work with that, the whole sort of healing the inner child is a big part of my work. And also another part of it, which, as you know, a huge chunk of my work is helping people to understand the experiences that have influenced them, that are connected to their other lifetimes.
That's something we don't think about. It never even crosses their minds that there might be the thing.
Yes, absolutely. And again, it's bad enough when it's something that's come from childhood. That's so deep. But, I'm very conscious in my work that the mind is like a huge computer. It's full of data files.
Right.
And these data files all influence a person's experience of life. So if there's a corrupt file somewhere in the hard drive or somewhere in that system, then everything, all of the output from that system is going to be tainted by that. So again, even though I'm not necessarily a computer wizard, but I do see my work as being a little bit like a computer programmer, in that we help people to go in and find these files with the glitches on them and the distorted views. So if ever I'm working with someone that has a problem with love, again, we take them into the hypnosis, which is just a focused state of attention, really. It's like deep relaxation, but they're aware of what's going on. And then I direct their higher mind to help them to find the root, the origin of this challenge, whatever it might be, and to direct them to the memory of the most specific or most significant lifetime that they may have experienced. And I know that a lot of people think to this day that the past life stuff is the imagination and that these are stories that are just made up. A lot of people in the field of psychology will say that it's the unconscious mind creating a metaphor to help people to understand from a dissociated perspective their problem, which might be true. It's entirely possible.
But like you, I do happen to believe in past lives, in other lives, that we didn't just arrive in this one life.
Absolutely. And I fell off the fence a long time ago with that one, because I've had so much evidence and so much proof that these things are real. And on top of that, in doing this work for officially about 20 years now, what I've seen is that it works. So whether it's real or whether it's a story, I don't actually care, because it really does make a difference.
I love your analogy of the mind as a computer, and then all the software and the glitches and the viruses in there. That absolutely puts it into perspective. To anyone who doesn't really understand, the workings of it. I mean, that makes it so clear, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely. And you take a file out and you have a look at it and you see where the glitch is, you see what caused the glitch, you see where it started.
Right.
And then you're able to reprogram it. You're able to take it out and you actually rewrite the story. Find out, full understanding, because it will have served a purpose. It will be there for a reason. Yeah. And so when you understand what the purpose is, then you can fix it and then you can put it back.
Right.
It's beliefs that we hold.
Right.
And so, and anybody that's interested in the science, more of the science of it, only has to look at the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, who wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. And the epigenetics is a field where they look at the information that's encoded in the DNA, and they've broken it down into being a bit like binary code on a computer. So it's like your DNA is a code, it's a language. I have to admit, it did hurt my head a little bit as well, because I do have a very scientific approach to things. So the fact that I could get people to go in and be witness to certain stories and then change the stories, and then their life changes.
Yes.
And not just their life, but the people around them, and people sort of in a bigger picture in their world. So not even just immediate people, suddenly long lost friends would reappear, or loves would appear, or old loves would go. Really profound. And again, I'll give you an example in a minute, but some really profound changes that happen for people.
Yes.
Bruce Lipton was looking at the fact that actually the information that's encoded in the DNA, which is this language, like a binary code, you have the ones and the zeros in a computer, and that this is the thing that has the glitches in it. And beliefs get carried down, and these beliefs are being carried down from our ancestors. So we carry the same fears and the same beliefs as our ancestors, which also, I dive into the ancestral stuff now too, to clear that. So if there's any beliefs that are, corrupt about love, especially, I have some clients that go all the way back to prehistoric times where they were so focused on survival, there wasn't any space to nurture the children, to just nurture, to love, to cherish. It was just, we just have to survive. We just have to find food. We have to find shelter. And so those children grew up not knowing what it was to be loved and supported. So weren't able to then pass it on to there was no frame of reference for it.
Yeah. And it carries on and on and on.
And it carries on and on and on. So, I see whole ancestral lines.
Right.
And obviously it's not the same for everybody, but in some families, that's seen and not heard, that, don't bother us, it's just, it just carries on.
Yes. And so many of us can relate to that, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And and it also means that, whatever that program that's running is about, then people will attract people into their worlds who match their experience.
Of course.
So it's going to be people who don't have the training or the experience of love that actually match one another, because it's familiar and they operate in the same ways. You can then have the two people that don't really know how to connect and give love, and then they have children and don't know how to give love to their children. And then it just, it spirals, and then that disconnect is just so profound. Also, Bruce Lipton was talking about junk DNA. And that just hurts my head. Junk DNA to me is just scientists who don't know what it is, and they can't explain it, so they call it junk. Like it's going to be junk. Like there's going to be anything in there that doesn't actually have some relevance and importance.
It makes me laugh.
I do get slightly frustrated with science sometimes. It's valuable, but really. Anyway, and I think what they're starting to realise now is that what's in that junk DNA is that information about who we are from a perspective, and it's the information about who we are as a soul. It's our essence. It is our truth. And for me, that junk DNA is where our spiritual nature, the information about our other lifetimes and who we've been and who we are, and the encoding of what's unfinished business, what are the beliefs that we've carried on these other lives. So for me, that's the data.
That's so exciting, because it's just that they haven't discovered what it's for yet, right?
Yes, so science and spirituality are now starting to meet in here. Obviously, where quantum physics has opened stuff up, and we're looking at the fact that we are all connected, and there is a field that we are all a part of. Jung used to talk about the collective unconscious. In his mind was the space where all the data of all the lives that had ever been lived was accumulated. So, most cultures or most traditions have a space that they will refer to in that way. And so again, this for me was just such a joy, because or such a relief, because I realised that what we were doing was that we were recoding the information that was in the junk DNA. We were rewriting the codes. We were ironing out the glitches that were in that structure, the sort of makeup of the person. And as I said, this was Bruce Lipton's proof, was that it's not set in stone. Whatever information is in that DNA can be changed. Change the emotion, you change the belief, you can actually change what is encoded into it. So
Right.
that for me was just incredible, because by going in and changing the story, you go change the emotion, you go change the belief that's connected to it. It is resetting that frame. So again, when people go into the hypnosis state, if you ask the right question, all you're doing really is you're opening up the data files. You're going in and you're literally going in through this system, and your what I call higher mind, the intuitive mind, which is is responsible for the storage area. This is a man with a clipboard that knows where everything is. So you ask this part of the mind, right, take me to the most significant, to the most relevant experience that's going to help us to understand this and heal this. There we go. And I use a really simple metaphor, as you will know because you've experienced it.
Yes.
So, and because the unconscious mind likes symbol, it does like metaphor. So I ask people to imagine that they're going down a pathway or a corridor, and that there are entrances. And this is literally just access to these files. And so one of my favourite was, and this was a guy who came to see me. He was, let's just say he worked in a very corporate environment. So his job was this was not somebody that was particularly spiritual, but he was struggling. He'd had counselling, he'd done traditional therapy, and nothing was really shifting it for him. And his big problem that he had was a commitment issue. He had been in several 2 to 3 year long relationships, and at the point at which it had got to sort of the 2-ish year mark, when the partners were hoping that it was going to move to the next stage, he would get chronic, cold feet wasn't the word. This man's feet were blocks of ice, and he would literally run the other way. And it was so bad that he couldn't even go on holiday with a girlfriend. Because it was actually a phobia. Because the definition of a phobia is complete avoidance of a thing. It's not just an anxiety or a fear. He couldn't even go on holiday for longer than 2 or 3 days.
Oh my!
The commitment to just a week with somebody was enough to break him out into a fever. He couldn't do it. He tried. He'd actually tried to go on holiday with partners, and he'd had to get on a plane and come home.
Oh, imagine if you're the partner and kind of rejection and abandonment going on there.
Exactly. So 2 relationships had gone down the Swanee because of this, and he was now 2 years into another relationship, and this was somebody that he cared very deeply about. He was very much in love with this girl, and they worked in the same industry, even though they worked in slightly different sort of operations, but the same industry. And it had got to the point where every weekend she packed a bag and threatened to leave. Because she said to him, we are getting on. He was in his kind of late 30s by this point, and she's saying, you either make the commitment or I'm going. I want the next step.
Yes, well, that sounds as though she loves herself too, because you can't be with someone who keeps doing that to you, can you?
No, and obviously, the fact that they couldn't even go on holiday, she's like, you need to get this sorted out. It needs to be sorted. And he kept saying, I do love you, I don't want you to go. And she's like, well, then prove it.
And
it was almost every weekend, it was like the ultimatum. If there isn't a ring on the table, I'm going. So there were lots of door slamming and him chasing her and putting suitcases back in, and it was intense.
Sounds like a drama. I'm laughing, but it's not laughing matter.
Absolutely. And what sometimes happens to me is that, often it's the last resort. People will resort to the hypnosis because nothing else has worked.
Yes, and they're scared of hypnosis, like I was. Yeah. It was my last resort. I kept thinking, oh Lordy, I've never been hypnotized. I don't know what's going to happen to me. It's the unknown of it. Yeah. And it's also, as you say, if this guy is a really sort of non-spiritual type person and very practical, then he'd probably look at it as a bit of weird stuff anyway, right?
Sometimes people can, but I think he must have spoken to somebody, and because obviously it was a phobia, so he came to me for the phobia. He came to me to try and reduce this fear. So he wasn't coming for past lives. Nothing about that was mentioned at all. So we started looking at it, and to be fair, this guy was really determined, and so we did quite a few sessions looking at his early childhood. And his parents had divorced when he was younger. His father had had lots of affairs. He had a very, very vivid imagination. So whatever he thought about, actually, he would almost in his mind, it was almost as though he could kind of make it happen. Great trait if you're visualizing a fantastic future, but if your life is based on anxiety and fear, not good. We managed to go in and take care of the inner child, and we managed to reset these fears and anxieties. So a lot of things started to get better, but he still couldn't quite get to the commitment part. You know, he did manage to go and have like a slightly longer break with the girlfriend and promising her, look, I'm working on it. He came for quite a few sessions, and then, you know, and we cleared so many layers of beliefs and fears, and again, he had to be reminded that he was not his father. Right. Part of his fear was that he would commit, he would get bored, and then he would be the man who had affairs. And he didn't want to be that man. Right. As far as he was concerned, if he did it, he wanted it to be a full commitment, and he wanted it to be for life. Yeah. He wanted to do it properly. So we dealt with that part. You know, we separated him from the father figure so that he could do things differently. Still shifting. So he came in one day and I said, look, here's what we're going to do, because he was a very good hypnotic subject. You know, he totally embraced it. He loved the hypnosis. Right. When he realised that it was very much like meditation.
Yeah, it's very relaxing, calming, isn't it?
Exactly. So he was practicing the self-hypnosis at home. So the anxiety levels had gone from like 9.5 out of 10 to about 3. But the commitment bit was still a problem. So I said to him, look, I need you to have an open mind, because we've done so much work on your current life. Right. And we've done so much work on your child. I said, so let's just be open. I'm just going to request that your higher mind just takes us to, you know, whatever is at the root of this not being able to commit. And he said, okay, fine, you know, I'll do whatever, I'll do anything. I said, okay. So I suggested, and I didn't mention past lives, I just said to his higher mind, look, please take us to the root, to the origin, to the most significant event, to the most significant memory in his memory bank that is going to explain why he's got this commitment, this aversion to marriage and being in a committed partnership. And it was such a sweet moment, because he said, oh, after he'd gone through the door, I said, what is it? He said, I'm in a cave. Right. And I said, okay. And obviously he's still sort of conscious and aware of what's going on. He said, I'm wearing animal skins.
He must have been quite shocked.
Said, okay. So he was quite taken aback by this. I said, just go with it. Just trust, you know, just go with it. He said, there's my tribe and my partner and my children are in the cave behind me. And I said, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm standing at the entrance to this cave. And he said, I have this makeshift spear, and there are wolves and a bear who are trying to make their way into the cave.
Oh, gosh.
So I'm protecting everyone. And there was a big fire just near the entrance to the cave. And I said, okay, well, tell me what happens next. And he said, oh. And it turned out that one of the wolves had lunged straight at him, gone for his throat, and had pushed him backwards into the fire, where he was killed. And of course, the animals then came into the cave and would have attacked the tribe. And I would like to point out that not all past lives are quite as traumatic as this from the beginning.
No, mine wasn't, thank goodness.
No. Some of them are very beautiful, some of them are very lovely. But what was significant about this, and this is the point that I always get to in the journey, because you're looking for unfinished business or what's not resolved. What was your very last thought? You know, as you died, as you left the body, what was the very last thing that went through your mind? And he said, I'm a failure. I failed my family. I'm worthless, I'm useless, I didn't deserve them.
Oh.
I let them down.
Interesting.
So this absolute kind of sense of helplessness, hopelessness, you know, I'm rubbish, I'm useless, was the vibration, like such an intense belief that he carried with him, and it was still running.
Oh my gosh, yes, you can tell, right?
I'm not worthy
to
be, you know, a part of a family. So part of the healing journey, again, as you know, is getting people to firstly look at what it was that they were being tested on in their lifetime. Because I do believe we all have a mission, we all have a challenge. There's something that we all agreed to before we get here.
Right.
This also means it affects the family that we choose to be born into. So when we know what our challenge is, sometimes the challenge is, can I learn to love myself? And if someone chooses to be born into a family where there isn't any love and they have to learn it themselves.
Right.
Even his story, where these parents that he had were not capable of loving each other, they didn't demonstrate love to him, there was a lack of it. This is someone that has to. You know, how do you do love if no one showed you? So when I said to him, all right, well, what was the test? the challenge? And he said, oh, it was to learn about courage. I said, okay.
Well, it takes courage to love.
It takes courage to love, but it also takes courage to be the man standing in front of a cave, surrounded by wild animals.
Yes.
And have nothing but a bit of wood and a bit of flint tied to it to protect everybody.
Yes.
So I got him we called in the family. I called in
the
woman and the children and said, so did you think that he failed you?
Right.
And they said, are you kidding?
Of course
He
not.
was the bravest, the most courageous, the most incredible man. He was smaller than, he was quite a slight man in this life. You know, he wasn't the biggest man of the tribe, but he was the bravest. They said he'd already been injured. Apparently one arm had already been gashed by one of the wolves, and he still insisted on being the one that would stand out front to defend everybody. And they just said to him, you were our hero, and we loved you beyond anything.
Yes.
Please don't ever think you let us down, because you never did.
Oh, that's so amazing. I feel almost tearful.
So he's crying in the chair. I'm trying to hold it together on the other side, and I'm kind of whooping, it silently, because I'm like, yes, look, there it is. Anyway, so I said, look, do you think that you actually demonstrated courage? He said, yeah. Okay, all right, I did. Okay.
Yeah.
So I said, right, so you can sign off that test now. Sign it off, right? Stamp it, done. I did courage. I proved it.
Yes.
I proved I'm courageous. So he gets rid of that contract.
Right.
He's then able to upgrade it to something new. And I said, okay, what is it that your higher mind, is giving you permission to experience instead? Instead of having to prove that you're brave, instead of trying to prove that you are courageous.
Right.
What are you given permission for? And he said, oh, I'm being given permission to experience love and to enjoy it. So he takes the new contract, this new belief that I have permission to experience love.
Right.
So the woman who was his partner in that lifetime, they apparently, and I double checked, I said, ask her, what's your connection to her? And she said, I'm one of your soulmates.
Yes, because we have more than one, don't we?
We have more than one. This is, the thing about love. And I do actually have several chapters of this in my book.
Okay.
That people think that they have one soulmate.
Yeah.
I hear this time and time again that people think there is one.
Yeah, but there isn't. There's more than one, isn't there?
There isn't. There's so many people that come in to test us, to support us, to go through these journeys in life. And it's the people that create the most adversity that are our greatest soulmates, because we learn the most, we evolve the most. But anyway, she said, I'm one of your soulmates and I'm with you now.
Oh my gosh, do you think so it's this girl that he's with?
And he said, oh my God, I recognise her. It's the same soul. It's the same. It's my partner now.
Oh, I've got goosebumps. That's so amazing.
And she said, look, we've got another chance. Life got cut short in that lifetime. We didn't have time to enjoy our love. But I came in because I wanted part of the test. I'd agreed to be there and go through that lesson with you because I needed you to learn how brave you are. I needed you to know how courageous you are.
Yeah.
And she said, you should have died thinking I did it. I got to the end and I defended my family. I stood my ground. I was in my courage right to the end. She said, but you didn't. And I couldn't get to you. I haven't been able to get that through to you.
Oh.
Anyway, so he then looks down and there are these two boys that have been in the cave with them. And he's like, and who are these? And she's like, these are our children. These are our children. And they are waiting. So these two boys come in the spirit realms where we, when we do healing work in the trance state, come running and they throw themselves at him. And they're wrapping their arms around him, just showing him the most amount of love, which he's had no reference for up to this point in his life. And now he's really bawling. I'm really trying to hold it together. Trying to be very professional. But it was so profound. It was so profound. Anyway, so he's just, given the message. He said, don't waste it this time.
Yeah.
We can make the most of it. We need to make the most of it. And the boys are like, we love you. We want to come in. We want you to be our father. You were our hero. So that session finishes. He comes out of the trance state and says, what the hell was that? And I said, well, look, I just told you to be open-minded. And as I said to him, I said, look, who knows? Maybe it was an analogy. Right. Maybe it was real. But actually, it's the message that you got
Right.
that is the most important. And he
Right.
said, but I know it was her. And he said, that's why I feel so frantic every time she tries to leave, because I know we're meant to be together.
Yes, of course.
That's why this time I'm doing everything to make it work. Anyway, he came back the following week because he'd already booked like a few sessions. So I said, look, let's just make sure we clear any other layers. So we did a future life this time. And so in the future life, I said, okay, because again, there was still a part of him that's still a little bit resistant.
Right.
You know, it was habitual. There was the part of him that was used to resisting it because it was so ingrained. So we did this sort of future life. So I could work with the part of him that was habitually not doing love. So we take this part and we go on this journey. And so I took him into the future and I said, look, we're going to take you into the future if you don't change.
Right.
If you don't open up to this commitment so that you can see what life is going to be like certainly without this partner.
Yeah.
So he goes in and he's there, it's 5 years in the future. And he says, oh my God, and I'm in another relationship and it's 2 years and this one's leaving as well. And I'm not even as involved with this one as I was with the other ones, I'm just repeating the same pattern. It's just the same. And I'm older and I'm sadder and so this part of him that, has the resistance is going, oh, God, actually, that's really crap. So then I take him out of there and I take him into the version of the future where he lets go of, the resistance, the last remnants of this resistance.
Right.
And allowed the commitment and he's allowed the relationship to unfold. Because the other one was going, yeah, but it's responsibility and you could be stressed and you'll have to support them and how's it going to be and you have to provide for them and it's all anyway, so he goes into this other future and suddenly he has this huge beaming smile on his face. I said, what is it that you're aware of? And he said, I've just walked up to this really beautiful house. And he said, I'm obviously on my way home from work. He said, I've got to the front door, I've opened the door and these two little boys are running out at me and they've just wrapped themselves around me and they're just calling daddy, 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 and they are so excited that I'm home. And he said it's the most beautiful feeling ever. And he said, and as I'm, they literally wrap around me as I go in, and he said, my wife is there, and it's my partner now, and he said she is so beautiful. And he said, do you know what, I've just realised we've gone into business together. Because they both worked in the same field.
Of course.
We have our own company, which is why the combined forces of us being together means that we've been able to earn more, we have more time, we take turns in who's working and who looks after the children. He said it's this beautiful balance of everything. So all that stuff that I was afraid of, he's like, I feel so supported. And it feels like such an equal, amazing partnership. Anyway.
My God, this is so amazing though, Lorraine, because imagine if we could all do this. Imagine if we could, everybody could see their amazing future.
Exactly. Anyway, so as far as we were both concerned, that was it. He was done. And then I get a phone call about a week later and he says, I need to come again. And I thought, really? There can't be another layer. Really? There can't be another one. Anyway, he turns up, he went, no. He said, I'm freaking out. I bought the ring. I don't know how to do it. He said, I've waited all this time. He said, I need to make sure I get it right. And I'm freaking out, keep breaking out into sweats because she's waited so long. I really want to make sure that it's the perfect experience for her.
Oh, that's so lovely.
And I said to him, you do realise that I said, it doesn't matter. Just, you just throw it at her in the kitchen, whatever. But anyway, so he did. And then I have to say, so I did have one more session with him about a year later because he called me out of the blue because he was all done. I get the message that he proposed. She was delighted, and then I get one about a year later. I was like, okay, what's going on now?
Oh no!
And he said, well, we're in the middle of planning the wedding, and I was like, oh, thinking, please don't tell me you're getting cold feet. And he said, I've turned into Groomzilla. He said, men aren't supposed to care about this stuff. He said, I want to be involved in the flowers and I want to be able to choose the table settings.
Oh, that's brilliant.
but I have to say, so it was all fantastic. But and it's because this was this was a good few years ago, about a year ago. You know how on Facebook, it gives you suggestions.
Yes.
And he and I weren't connected on Facebook, but he popped up
Right.
as somebody I might know.
Yes.
And in his arms was a small boy.
It's all coming true. Oh, that is so wonderful. I was going to ask you, were you invited to the wedding?
No, because I mean, obviously, he's not going to tell people that this was done to.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine, in his world, oh yeah, by the way, I sorted this out by doing past life work.
Yeah, maybe not.
Probably not, and I don't mind because I don't, it's, and I mean, he did give me permission to anonymously write about him in my book, so I have done.
And also you probably get loads of these anyway, don't you? You probably get too many.
So, and this is just an example of how all the different levels and layers, and this is what I say to people. Sometimes people they say, but I've done work on this. I've had therapy and I've looked at it, and I say, but it's like a tapestry where there are so many threads.
Right.
And you may work on one particular strand, but actually that's interwoven with another and yet another and yet another. So a lot of people will do some work and then they think they've done it, and then they get frustrated when things aren't changing and things aren't fixed.
Yeah.
I always say, look, there are so many levels, there's so many layers, and your experience in life will tell you whether you've done the work or not.
Right.
Because if you're not where you want to be and you don't have what you want,
then you
and
haven't.
whether that is the career or the relationship
or
the whatever you want that's going to be fulfilling in your life, if it's not there yet, you've still got some work to do.
Yeah.
There is still some inner work that needs to happen.
And that's the hard thing, though. Don't you find that people are almost afraid to go there, almost afraid to do that kind of work because it is hard?
It is, and a lot of people say to me, well, the past is in the past. So why are you spending all of that time? Shouldn't you be focused on the present? And shouldn't you just visualize what you want? And so many people talk about the law of attraction, and you do your vision board, and you meditate on it and focus on it. But if your internal belief system, if you're in call it a vibration for want of something else, if that inner coding within you doesn't match what you're trying to bring in, you can meditate and chant and vision board till you are blue in the face. It's not coming. So your inner space has to be in alignment with the thing that you want. And that's why for some people, I have somebody when I was doing my training, and she wrote a list, big long list, very detailed. I mean, very, very detailed, of this man that she wanted to have in her life. And this man appeared exactly as she'd written him down. The only thing that she hadn't written down, because it hadn't occurred to her, was that she didn't want someone that smoked. And this man smoked his little cigars all the time, and it drove her bloody balmy. And I said, but look, can't really complain that much. This man literally is a walking version of what you called in.
Yes.
But you see, she'd done lots of work on herself. For her, it happened, and it happened really quickly. She called him in because she was there.
Yes.
And again, this is what I always say to people. If people want love in their lives, the only reason why it's not there or it isn't working is because they haven't yet learnt to really love themselves.
That makes complete sense to me, actually.
Yeah. And a lot of people, and I see this time and time again, they want love in their lives because there's something lacking or void in them.
And they think someone else is going to give it to them.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I want to tear my hair out every time I see that bloody Tom Cruise movie, Jerry Maguire, and that line, "You complete me."
I've never seen that movie.
But I mean, it's it actually became this really quoted line, "You complete me." I'm like, no,
you complete yourself.
Exactly, be complete and find somebody else that's complete. Because otherwise, what happens is that someone that needs someone to complete, they feel great when that person is there.
Yes.
But the minute that person is no longer there, the little voice in the back of their head goes, "I don't feel complete anymore. Maybe it wasn't them. Maybe they're not the right one. Maybe I need to find somebody else. Or maybe I'm just going to get resentful at that person because they're not giving me everything I thought they were going to give me. And I thought they were the solution to my problem. And now they're not. And now I'm angry with them and I'm going to make them suffer."
Isn't it true?
Start to go wrong. People fall in love and they're caught up in this heady expectation of, all the pheromones and the hormones, and it's all really beautiful at the beginning. But then as that starts to wear off and then real life kicks in, this is what happens. And so oftentimes love is not given a chance, especially nowadays when we're in this culture of, I'm just going to swipe next.
Yes.
And I see so many people that come in and they say, I'm in this relationship, it's not working. And they're not actually claiming responsibility for
Right.
their part in it. And so I think a lot of people give up on love too quickly because they just assume it's not the right person, and they go next. So instead of, and this is what I've always said to the people that I work with, because I work with quite a lot of couples. I've always said that a relationship is not going to work if one partner is unwilling to do work that needs to be done in order to move it forward.
Right.
If one person says, oh no, I am who I am, it's not going to change, take it or leave it, and they're not willing to do any work on themselves or on the relationship, then there's no hope. Even if a relationship is really turbulent, and even if it really, if there's loads of battles, and because, love is not always easy. This is the other thing, it isn't the fairy tale.
No, two unfortunately.
People with different likes and dislikes, and just two different human beings trying to coexist in a space. It's not easy.
No.
But it's the ones who are prepared to work at it and who aren't afraid to actually stand their ground and say how they feel and battle things out, work through it. As long as both partners are committed to actually doing it, then it's going to work. So again, I really encourage people to dig deep. I do think that sometimes people give up too soon. On the other hand, that said, on the complete flip of that, there are also a lot of people that stay in things for a lot longer than they should.
And yes,
they think this person's their soulmate, and I have to put my hand up and say guilty to that. I was in a relationship for far longer than I should have been because I was convinced this person was my soulmate, and I was still in the belief back then that you only had one. So I believed that these were the cards I'd been dealt. I was just going to have to get on with it. It's only when I started to realise, oh, you have more than one soulmate. They're coming to teach you a lesson. Oh, hang on, what am I supposed to learn here? And then this was an ongoing many lifetimes together, which again, he and I both believed completely. We remembered lots of different past lives that we'd had together. And the lesson had been for me to not be his mother and for him to stand on his own 2 feet. I spent so many lifetimes where I had been, I'd taken care of everything and just continued kind of on in that vein in this lifetime.
Right.
So actually, the success was stepping away from it, staying in it.
Yes.
Success saying, no, I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, and I step away and actually honour myself.
Yes, and in a way empower him.
Exactly, which I did, and to this day it was probably one of the most amicable divorces ever.
That's great.
And God love him, I bumped into him recently, and he's really happily married, 2 beautiful children, and great. And that wouldn't have happened had he and I stayed together. He really had to step up because thankfully his new partner was a little less accommodating than me.
So he had to, he had to step up.
I was just too laid back, so it would never have happened.
But I also think, you talked earlier a little bit about people being in a certain vibration, and I think that sometimes happens if you split up with someone and you are in a certain vibration, then don't you find that people then hook up with somebody else and who is in the same vibration? So this is where it comes, where we have the same pattern. We go for the same person over and over and over again. And you kind of go, why can't I break out of this cycle? I'm doing this thing where I'm going for the same guy all the time.
Absolutely.
And
even if it looks completely different when it first starts.
Right.
That's what usually suckers people in.
Yes.
That it does look different. It appears different on the surface.
Right, but it's not.
And then it is, as time goes on, you realise that you're back in the same pattern.
Yeah.
And you see, this is so much so with the work that I do, I look for the patterns.
Yes.
Because if something is being repeated over and over again, it means there is a lesson that needs to be learned, and it's just going to keep happening until you actually find out, right, what is this? What is the lesson?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be learning here?
Yes.
And whether it is about self-love, whether it is... I worked with a client recently. God love her. She had chosen as her soul test to experience unbelievable suffering.
Oh.
And wow. When she told me the story of her current life, this person had suffered. And obviously this didn't come out until we took her into a past life that had been absolutely horrendous. Like it was just a life of sadness and loneliness and obscurity and hunger. And thankfully it wasn't a very long life. She managed to sort of escape because she'd done it.
Yes.
But again, it was that same sense of not recognising, because she felt like she'd kind of given up at the end of that life. So she again died feeling like a bit of a failure and like she hadn't accomplished anything, like she hadn't achieved anything. And then when we actually got to the point and said, but what was the challenge? What were you meant to do? And when the message came back, you were meant to experience unbelievable suffering. Anyway, she burst out laughing because she was like, oh, I thought I failed because I didn't do anything. Didn't realise that was it. And it's like, yes, that was it. So now you can tick the box.
Yes, you've done it.
Move on. And then it's like, okay, once you swept that out of the way, what do you have permission for now? And she's like, joy.
Yes.
I have permission to experience joy, which was something that she, again, had no reference for. And what I love about doing this work was that once the new contract is put in place, I also allow people to go back because yes, we are kind of working with the imagination or the realm of the imagination in this work to a degree as well, because I got her to imagine what it would have been like in that past life had she had permission to do joy, not unbelievable suffering. So she got to go back and see what that life would have been like. Yes. And so all the things that went wrong and all the bits that, she'd lost her parents and, she ended up on the street. So the parents didn't die. Suddenly she's in this loving, supportive, joyful, happy family.
Yes.
And then she goes on to live this really long and beautiful life where she meets a partner and she has a beautiful relationship and she has children and shares joy with them.
Yeah.
So it's completely different. So, in the old Bruce Lipton thing, suddenly the emotion that she's feeling and this belief that she has that life can be joyful, that it can be beautiful, she now has a frame of reference for it. We've just created an entirely new file in the back of her mind. So when she does the Google search of who am I, what am I allowed to experience, it opens up to this absolutely beautiful, joyful experience.
Yeah, another possibility.
Yeah. So then it shows that this is what you can have now. Because whatever you heal in any lifetime, whether it's this lifetime or your childhood memories or your other lifetimes, it affects the hard drive, the data in the hard drive. So it affects the life in the present. And as I've said, and I've seen it. So one client who, again, beautiful young woman who was really struggling, and either the men she met that she liked didn't bother with her, and the ones that liked her she wasn't interested in, and she was in her mid-30s, really, really wanted to get married. That's all she just wanted to get married and have a family. She came from a very lovely, traditional family. And upon chatting about it, she confessed that she had this belief that she was never going to get married. And it wasn't one that she wanted, but it was just sort of lurking. And I think this was almost the first time she'd admitted it. She had this fear it was never going to happen. And in her past life, she believed that the person that loved her abandoned her.
Right.
It was Victorian times. Her mother died giving birth.
Right.
The father didn't know what to do with the daughter, so left her in the orphanage.
Yeah, they did stuff like that, didn't they?
Yeah, there's this child waiting, wanting her father to come back and take care of her. She gets adopted by a family who weren't particularly pleasant, but they were doing it to show good in their Christian community. Yeah. Oh, look, that's not me great. But she was never really treated very well. And eventually she, feeling a bit like an outsider, had made friends with a local boy who was very poor. And they had planned that when she was old enough, that they would run away together.
Okay.
Because they understood each other, and he treated her like an equal, and as nobody else had done. Her family found out about it right at the last moment, locked her in the house. So he was waiting for her, and she never turned up.
Oh, that's so terrible.
The family decided to marry her off to this older gentleman because they were fed up with her and wanted to get rid of her. He found out about the wedding because they announced it everywhere. Decided he believed that she'd changed her mind, that she wanted to have a better life. So he was devastated, heartbroken, and left town because he couldn't cope. So he left, wishing her happiness and hoping that she would be well. Anyway, she married this guy. It was horrendous. The man was horrible. She finally one day couldn't take it anymore and ran away. She managed to escape out of a window. She'd been locked up for practically since that day. She managed to escape and went to look for him, and he was gone. So she's now on the streets.
Yeah, because he thought she abandoned him, so he left. She
thought that, if he'd loved her, he would have waited.
Yeah.
So she gets sick and eventually dies.
Right.
And her dying thought is, he didn't love me, it was a lie, love hurts, it's not real, I'm never doing it again.
Right.
I will never love anyone again.
And then carried that forward.
Carried that forward. So she gets to the spirit realms, or she gets to the healing part, and again, part of her test is to trust in love, trust it. Yeah. So that, it's the ultimate test.
Yeah.
So she is then shown sort of montage of his life, and she's shown that for the rest of his life,
right,
he pined for her every day.
Oh my God, my heart is breaking.
Ever stopped loving her. But he had married someone else, loved his wife in his own way.
Yeah.
But her that was in his heart, he never forgot her, ever. So so we call him in, and he says, look, now you know that I did love you. I never stopped loving you.
Yeah.
I still love you now. And now you know I didn't betray you, and now you know that love is real. And we cleared her test. She had permission to let go of this, the trust.
Yeah.
Because she got to learn that it was real.
Yeah.
And she was given permission for true connection. So he says, I'm coming back, and you will know me by my eyes.
Right.
And I was slightly nervous because I thought that's quite a big declaration. If this doesn't happen, it kind of makes a mockery of everything that we're doing here. It's a big, big ask. Anyway, there was loads more, but I won't go into all that. So a few weeks later, I get this rather frantic call from her because she'd opened up a local magazine that someone had through her door, and there was a photograph of a man standing outside an art gallery, and she said, it's him. I know it's him. It's the eyes. It's him.
Oh my Lord. Could she